Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I'm Kirk Henderson, joined as always, or I would say almost semi-regularly, Josh Bowe. We're both editors over at MavsMoneyball.com. We're joining you a little after 9:50 on Thursday, December 28th. The Dallas Mavericks just fell to the Minnesota Timberwolves, 118-110. Josh, how you doing?
Doing okay. Good. Glad that we got to connect. And what we're talking about in pre-show. Sorry that of these back-to-backs you had to miss last night, which I thought, despite, both 0-2, so obviously not fun for Mavs fans, but in terms of like us and discussing something, I feel like you got the short end of the stick in terms of which game you got of this back-to-back, because even though the Mavericks lost last night, I felt like there was infinitely more things to talk about.
Yeah.
But you're here. We're back.
Well, and I'll address that. I am fighting the good fight in the sense of we knew when I, meaning me, Mavs Moneyball, Pod Maverick, everybody knew that when I had the second kid, there would be days where I would be completely non-functional. And that ended up being yesterday, even though I did watch the game. There's just times that I just can't, I can't have it on like I was for the not Lakers game, the Christmas Day game where I went like 3 hours full tilt like I was a radio host. And I'm just there are nights and days where I'm out of gas with the new kids. So Josh and everybody else that the site is helping that sort of thing. And I really am appreciative. My dogs just love ruining the intro level to this podcast. So I have one shredding something behind me right now. And why don't you kick off while I figure out what the heck it is?
Okay. Mavericks lose the Timberwolves 118-110. It was, I don't know. It was an interesting game in the sense that like the Timberwolves just never felt like they were ready to play, aside from, Anthony Edwards or maybe Rudy Gobert. I mean, it definitely felt like a game where the Timberwolves were more than aware of who was on the floor for the Mavericks, and they probably thought that this was going to be a game that they could win easily with a B effort. And credit to the Mavericks, they didn't let them off the hook. Like, I know they lost by 8, but they could have lost this game by 25, and no one would have really batted an eyelash. So it was at times a pretty impressive effort. I mean, they forced the Timberwolves to basically play the entire game out. Like, they did not get to rest starters in the fourth quarter. The Mavericks took a lead. I can't remember if it was in the third or the fourth, but they took a lead at one point in the second half. Like, this was a pretty competitive game. So like I kudos to the bench guys and some of the end of the rotation guys that got more minutes that helped contribute. But Tim Hardaway Jr. had a massive game, which was good to see because he's been slumping a little bit. So Go figure that he has a huge game when Luka's not playing. But it was. I think all of us at the site and, us too, we kind of were like, this is going to be a tough one to sit through. And it kind of was at times because I don't think either team had, played a clean game. But at least, it was competitive and we had to pay attention all the way through. And, credit to the junior varsity Mavs for making an effort of it at least.
Right. And so the Mavericks fall to 0-3 without Luka. During this Kyrie time, overarchingly, so right now they are sitting at 18-14. At this point last year, I think just due to the season starting with like a game differential, the Mavericks were climbing out of being 500 after they had lost a horrendous game to the Minnesota Timberwolves And then they went on this 7-game win streak where Luka turned into like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Larry Bird, and Wilt Chamberlain all together, where he was like averaging 45, 12, and 11. It was something insane. But that was against, really terrible teams. So I've been having, when I am chatting with people kind of about what's going on this year with the Mavericks, I just feel better about their win profiles. The kind of games that they've lost in maddening fashion. Yesterday's game to the Cleveland Cavaliers, that was the worst loss of the season. It was the worst loss of the season because it was exactly the kind of loss that the Mavericks suffered repeatedly during Luka Doncic's first 5 years, where they played down to opponents. The problem was yesterday, I'm not necessarily sure that they played down to the Cavs in so much as, we talked about it a little bit, but like the threadbare coaching of Jason Kidd shines through in some of these games where like they don't have easy button options. There were no plays that made any sense where it's like somebody's going to the rim. No, shots weren't falling. So it's like the hope is Luka save us, Luka save us. And it didn't happen because the man's playing the third most minutes in the NBA on a night in, night out basis. So, you flip over to this game and they fight hard and they lose. And it kind of is what it is. And it really is one of these things that I don't know how to feel about over too long a period of time, because they're without Kyrie and Luka. And so when the whole game, like the whole, we talked about this in the preseason, when Luka Doncic and Kyrie are who you build your team around and they're both not playing, what do you expect? Getting effort was great. I don't there's like two things I really don't understand about this game. And I think we can circle back to what those things are a little bit later in the show. But man, it was fun to watch. It was a sloppy game. The Wolves are, if you want to hear my hot take on the Wolves are going to implode in the postseason. They're just going to implode. Anthony Edwards is outstanding. Rudy Gobert gets away with so much bullshit that he cannot get away with against better. He shoved Derek Lively like 2 or 3 times. Like, I am not a refs guy anymore. I used to be in a big way, but the kind of things that like he does on the floor, if that's defensive player of the year worthy, fantastic. Just not getting called for fouls is defensive player of the year stuff. Fantastic. Karl Anthony Towns is a ninny. Like, I no other way really to describe him. His worst tendencies are the things that people bitch about with Luka, where he's just a complainer. Edwards is also amazing. I don't believe Mike Conley can survive the run because he's my age at this point. And then they have, like Slow-Mo is interesting, but they're a great regular season team, and I think they will be, but I think they are going to get blown off the doors in a real series. Doesn't matter how good their coach is. That's not to say, that it's just, I sort of was looking at this game and going, man, you can't play down to a team like this.
Yeah, they weren't very impressive.
No. Yeah.
But credit to the Mavericks for making it a fight. Tim had 32 on 19 shots. Kind of got a balanced effort most of the way. Like, no one else really popped besides Hardaway, but just like little contributions. Derrick Jones Jr. got to the line 8 times, which was pretty cool. Hey, Dwight Powell, 12, 14, 6, 2 steals, and a block. How about that stat line? Which is pretty funny to do it against the best defensive team in the NBA. And
14 rebounds.
Team. Yeah.
I wonder how many rebounds he has this season.
I don't know, not that many. 6 assists, though.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, 2 this might be the most he's stuffed the stat sheet since those tanking teams where he would have those big games like in March.
He has 86 rebounds on the year in 28 games. That's an average of where are we at here? That's an average of three a game.
Yeah. So he had 0. He hasn't grabbed more than 8 is the most he's had this month. So that's pretty funny.
That was something.
Yeah, and that's kind of emblematic of like the Wolves' effort level, because Powell is a guy that will feed off of your bad vibes. Like, if you're not going to work, like, that's the one thing you could say about Powell is he's going to at least work hard.
Yep.
And so that's almost how you can kind of describe the Wolves' effort level is they let Dwight Powell get 12, 14, and 6 when they have Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns playing. So
he clearly did it in response to the Andre Drummond's 24-25 game from yesterday.
you think that inspired him?
That inspired him, where he's like, "This man's not coming for my job. I'm Dwight fucking Powell."
Drummond might be playing himself out of the Mavericks price range at this rate, but it's just kind of funny to think about. But
right, again,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, like, I mean, the Mavericks shot the three pretty well. Like, offensively, they actually played good enough to win. It was just their defense wasn't very good. Probably like the standout thing that kind of stunk about this game is Derek Lively kind of looking like a rookie for the second game in a row, which is understandable. He's allowed to look like a 19-year-old rookie from time to time, and especially when, back-to-back games against Jared Allen and Rudy Gobert. Like, that's not a great draw for him. But yeah, 2 points in 15 minutes, 4 rebounds, just didn't make an impact at all. Like, he never, there was never a moment in the game where it felt like he was, really contributing. I felt like all the Mavericks runs came when he was on the bench. He had 5 fouls, so he was actually on the bench a lot. Like, he only played 15 minutes. So that's probably like the storyline of these two games is like, hey, Lively finally looking like a rookie, because he was on a stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, like, where I can't remember the last bad game he played. Like, he played before these two games, Minnesota, Cleveland. I mean, he had 20 and 10 against Phoenix. He hurt his ankle, so he was out. I mean, he played the Wolves before that, and he had 15 and 6, played pretty decent, played well against the Lakers. Like, he had a pretty good run. I think December 1st against Memphis is when you could say the last time he had a really, like, a stinker of a game. So, I mean, when you've got a 19-year-old rookie starting center, I think you're allowed to have 2 bad games in a row, but it's kind of is.
I mean, and if we're being candid, and if we're being, let's just be overly critical for a minute or two. If you're being overly critical, Lively's actually had 3 pretty rough games in a row, despite how important he was in the Phoenix win. So he has given, he let what was the guy's name? The for the Suns backup center. That guy had 23 and 19.
Metu.
And like, that's not on Likely specifically, but it's then, Allen played a heck of a game, and 9 offensive boards for Allen. Lively bears some responsibility there. He just does. And then tonight's game, where he just, getting worked by Rudy Gobert is not a shameful thing,
right?
But it still is a thing that happened.
Right.
And you look to build from it is I think the right thing. And I'm sure he will, because he rarely just 3-ish kind of what in the world. Yeah. Gene Paul in the chat says maybe the ankle is still not 100%. Maybe so. I don't know. It's one of these things where I don't want to be too critical, but I do think, like, I saw somebody I followed today posted about how yesterday was one of the best defensive games he's seen from Lively. And I think Lively made some really incredible defensive plays in that game, but that does not equate to a fully, like, solid defensive game. Because if, again, the guy that you're matched up with has whatever 16,
24 and 23,
20, like it's not a thing. Like, at that point, you're doing something that you need to be doing better.
Yeah. And then he'll be all right. I mean, the next 4 games are Golden State, Utah, Portland. So
he'll be fine.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
So, okay, let's circle back on some other things here, but just, this is a loss, and during losses, we get fewer people that tune in. But if you could do me a favor, head on down and click the like button on the stream. Go ahead and hit subscribe while you're down there. I'm not going to do a fan show after this, just because I'm still pretty tired, and really, I don't want to harp too much on something like these last 2 games, even though I'm sure there's a lot of people who are very, very frustrated. And, if you're listening on an audio stream, if you could, subscribe. I know it's so frustrating and kind of sad. I've been getting more and more emails about the Apple situation, and I'm just like, I have to answer each person individually. Like, I would, I don't know what our subscriber base is, but I think we probably have in the neighborhood of 10 to 15,000 regular downloaders on the audio side of things, based off of what I see in a given month. It can go, sometimes people dip in, we have 20 to 25,000, and like 65% of those are from Apple. So it's really like, but we're working on it. I'd really appreciate if you guys could do that and leave a comment on this video. I love reading the comments. It's one of my favorite parts of doing this. All right, let's see here. Let's circle back to some of the things that were a little bit frustrating about this game.
There's one big one we could talk about if you want to.
Yeah, have we talked? So Grant Williams finishes.
We haven't talked about him in a while. Me and you, at least.
Yeah. So Grant Williams has 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, and a -30 in 30 minutes.
In a game they lost by 8.
Yeah,
-30.
Yeah, that's he's in a bad spot right now, and he's probably getting moved to the bench whenever everybody's healthy, and I think that's for the best.
He already has been moved to the bench.
He'll stay there, right?
He came off the bench against Cleveland and against Phoenix. He
will stay there, which is very interesting to note, and maybe he'll work his way back into it. It's a long regular season, and we'll see kind of what happens with regards to that and whether he will make a difference there. He has been inexplicably bad. There's been a lot of talk about his weight. And I don't know. I'm always very reluctant to talk about that sort of thing because I didn't watch him enough at Boston to make a connection on this. But he's slow on the perimeter, and he has no lift on his jump. And his shot has been really short for quite a while. And fan 123 kind of sums it up, very succinctly in the chat. Grant looks fat. I don't necessarily want to say that is the case, but I do understand the sentiment. And whatever is going on with him right now in a physical way, everything he does is labored. There was a left-handed layup attempt he had after a really nice shot fake he got. I think it was like Edwards on him up in the air tonight. And he drove all the way to the paint and just like boofs the layup. And I don't know what he's shooting on twos, but it's really not.
I can get that for you real quick.
He sucks right now. And I think that we as a fan base, not you were actually pretty stable on him. We as a fan base had hoped for a lot from him. And he's just not been very good. And I don't know what to do about that because I think that he's paid a reasonable amount. I think he'll have ups and downs. And that's about the best that we can hope for. I mean,
he's shooting 49% on twos, which is not even far and away the worst of his career. He's a 54% shooter on twos for his career.
What any restricted area type stuff? Because that's where I've been like really horrified.
Keep talking, I'll find it.
It's okay. So there's just these elements of his game to where I think we expect a little too much from him. And there's 3-ish guys in the Mavericks rotation, which we're all kind of sick of collectively at the moment. It's to some degree or another. There's Grant, there's Josh Green. He came back yesterday and made some nice passes, but still he scored, I think, 2 points in like 25 minutes. And then Jaden Hardy, who we've talked about. I don't feel like, burying him anymore, though I do want you to go, if you're curious at all as to what he's shooting when he's a starter, the answer is very bad. So it's these pieces that you had hoped would do more for the Mavericks, I think have been asked to do a little too much in the absence of Kyrie. And I don't know whether I'm overreacting in the moment to these kind of meh to bad performances or whether we can hope for like a little bit of a rebound once they're further down the totem pole.
Yeah. Grant is shooting from, now I'm not doing restricted area, I'm on Basketball Reference. So they do it by distance. And
yeah.
So 0 to 3 feet, he's at 76%, which is better than actually.
I've just seen some really awful attempts lately.
Here you go. 3 to 10 feet, he's 31%. Where last season he was 46, season before that 49, and his first 2 seasons he was at 50%.
Okay.
So that's like in the paint, but outside the restricted area, he's 31%, which is not even, he was at 48% from that range for his career. So I mean, that's where you're seeing that.
Do you think there's anything to this fitness argument? Because let's push the weight part aside. He just looks gassed all the time.
Yeah, and I wonder, I don't know about the fitness part of it because, I didn't, people might be like, well, you talked about it with Luka, and it's like, well, we've watched Luka play 70 games a season for 5 years, and we've watched his body weight and fitness fluctuate. Like we have, there's something to talk about. With Grant, I don't feel as comfortable because I'll just be frank and say, like, I didn't watch him play every single game in Boston last season, so I don't know if this is different than what he was doing last season. The thing I will say, though, is that he's playing the most minutes he's ever played in his career, average wise. He's at 29 minutes per game, which is more than any of his other previous seasons. And he's also he started 26 games this season. That's the most games he's ever started in a single season. So he's not only playing more minutes, he's playing more minutes against better players. Because in Boston, he was bench units and occasional spot starter. So, there's a big difference in coming into the game playing against backups and starting the game playing against the best 5 players on an opposing team. So I almost wonder if that combination of increased minutes and the increased role in terms of playing, start playing against starters is maybe zapping him a little bit more than last season when, you get to come off the bench and ease into the game. So I wonder, like, that's my only theory because I don't, I just can't touch the fitness stuff because I have no idea. I just have no idea. And I'm not good at talking about that stuff.
Well, and maybe we'll see as things go on. So, all right. I don't understand why Markieff Morris played. He was a -7 in 3 minutes, and he, along with Grant, were two of, Grant was like a slow bleed. Morris goes in the game, and the game went from being close to being out of reach. That was
bad. That was a bad call.
And I'm not like he got absolutely destroyed by Jaden McDaniels on a non-foul call that was like that was a football play. I have no idea how that wasn't called. So I feel a little bad for him. Wamik in the chat gets the what I'm thinking of talking about next, where he's playing Morris over both Holmes and Prosper. And candidly, like, that's unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. Why? Markieff Morris is a non-guaranteed contract player. What does he do?
I don't know. And he got a DNP CD against, he hadn't played since December 22nd. He didn't play against Phoenix. He didn't play against Cleveland. I don't know.
Why is he the call against the Giants? At least, if you're going to lose and get some experience. And, it's so funny. It's so funny. We have, by and large, been off the kid discussion point, despite our fan base's really desire for it, because the Mavericks, there's two reasons why we've been reluctant to talk about kid. Number one, they're winning. By and large, they're winning. Number two, there's the simple fact of unless Luka and Kyrie don't want him there anymore, he's not going. So talking about this sort of stuff feels like beating a dead horse. Josh and I had a little fun with the Twitter account, who probably won't listen to this podcast, but it was like, it's a person whose entire existence seemed dedicated to defending Jason Kidd decisions, which really fascinating way to spend your time, guy. You can go find that in my Twitter replies if you want to see it from last night. And Kidd is just, I don't want to say he's a bad coach, but he makes decisions that are completely indefensible. And all coaches do to some degree or another, but when you ask him about his decision-making, he seems just as mystified during some of his answers, where it's just like, it's more, he's like, oh, I'm coaching off vibes is kind of the thing. And, this Morris decision is one of it. I get Omax is probably frustrating to watch, but watching Morris get wrecked is just as frustrating for fans because Morris is not going to be on the team and Omax is.
Morris might not even be on the team before the by the end of February.
Yeah.
That's I don't even know if they're going to guarantee his contract for the rest of the season, because I think there's a date. I don't know when that comes up, but I think there's a date where it becomes guaranteed for the whole season. So I don't know. We'll see. That part's weird. At least he only did play 3 minutes, so it's not like he took him out right away. But it was like, why even do that? Like, why not? I'm not a big Rashawn Holmes guy, but I don't understand why you wouldn't play him.
You're playing the biggest team in the league. Biggest team. I get Holmes is not your cup of tea. He's apparently like multiple coaches, non-cup of tea. And he is just completely like against playing him unless it's super garbage time. And okay, you don't want to play him, play Omax. Omax is a dump truck of a person. Like he's so fucking big. It's
really
I don't care if he's going to be a forward long term. If you're just like at a certain point, basketball is about playing bodies that are, you need big guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It was a weird game. Josh Green has scored a total of 4 points in his 2 games.
He does have 10 assists in those 2 games, which is hilarious.
That is pretty funny. He's 2 of 7 from the floor. Only played 15 minutes tonight in a game without Luka. Wasn't that weird? Because isn't that his thing? Is popping off when there's no Kyrie and there's no Luka? I understand that with Jones and Exum, those have been your guys, so you're going to play them. But I don't know. It was kind of odd. Seth Curry played 30 minutes, probably as because he was so good in the Cleveland game. You couldn't keep Hardaway off the floor, and you're going to play Exum and Jones because those two, quite frankly, have been extremely better than Green this season. So is Green going to get squeezed out of the rotation? I'm just curious where the minutes are if Exum and Jones are your locked in starters. Grant's coming off the bench. Yep. Hardaway's not going anywhere. Where are the minutes for Green? I mean, he's got to figure out a way to get some time on the floor.
I like the concept of scaling back Green's rope to where if he's working, then you let him cook. But they were letting him, prior to his injury, they were letting him play too much useless basketball. He's got to be making statistical contributions. And speaking of weird statistics, Josh Green has played 3 games in the month of December. He played on December 1st, and he also had 5 assists in that game. So he is averaging 5 assists a game for the month of December. This is where, you get Luka and Kyrie back. I think things either start to fall into place or we start to ask much more interesting roster questions. Where what kid can do. And this is where I think we kind of will, at that point, we're going to scale back on the kid criticism as a fan base, because it's really hard to be super pissed at him when everybody, they've played with half, they've had not the best injury luck. They haven't had the worst, but it's been not great. So I don't know. I think there's an opportunity for the Mavs to show something in the last 40 games of the year if they're able to get guys healthy. Now, sometimes guys just might not get healthy. Kyrie's foot thing is maybe it won't go away. I mean, Maxi Kleba, for all we know, has a club foot and may never play basketball ever again for what they're dealing with the toe here. So this is it's been a little bit odd, but the fact is they're still 4 games above 500 and they have I still, looking, I was very confused. I remember 2 weeks ago, somebody was arguing with me about how difficult the schedule was ahead. And I'm like, there's not a murderer's row of games. They all they seem to have some winnable ones and some tough ones. And you'd like to see them get a marquee win past the Phoenix game felt like the best win of the year, but ultimately Phoenix kind of sucks right now. But by and large, the Mavericks are beating who they're supposed to. So I don't know.
But you'll make the playoffs if you do that.
Yes.
And I understand that everyone doesn't get jazzed up about it, but that's how you make the playoffs.
Well, that's what. So my friends at the podcast and video show, We Talk Mavs, were having a bit of a discussion about this today. And I've had this with multiple people of the question kind of starts to become, would you rather be 15-15 with some amazing wins and a number of horrifying losses, which is what the Mavericks were at this point last year, and really the year before that, almost every year of the Luka experience is maybe 19-20 is the one exception. Or would you rather be 18-14, having beaten the shit out of all the teams you're supposed to have, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions? You got to get the regular season is such a grind. You cannot get too high and you cannot get too low. And if the Mavericks are winning the games they're supposed to the vast majority of the time, then they're going to avoid the play-in. They just are. They're a top 8 to 10 team in the league, is my opinion. I really believe this, at least with a full and healthy roster. So I don't know, the sky is falling mentality when they do things like tonight. I get, not tonight, really last night, is understandable for the moment, but then all you got to do is is just look at the long like scope of things. And how do you feel about like their win profile? And I they're beating the teams they're supposed to, and that's really all I can ask for, you know?
Yeah, I can understand, if you're perusing some national media people or some other alternative sources that are not Mavs focused. I mean, there's a lot of data out there like net rating that's adjusted net rating, strength of schedule adjusted rating that is not kind to the Mavericks because I mean they quite their schedule has been extremely soft up until right around this point. So there's a lot of data out there from people that aren't Mavericks people that says that there might be a slide coming,
Sure.
which might happen. I don't know. I'm not gonna argue with that right now.
I
But
think
that's probably what's spooking people, I think.
I mean, what did they jumped out? What was the I'm looking at this. Why am I asking you? They jumped out to an 8-2 and then a 9-3 start, right?
Yep.
And then since then, the Mavericks have essentially played 500 basketball, maybe even slightly under 500. But you go up against Golden State, Utah, Portland. If they don't win all 4 of these games, I will be shocked. Okay. You go on a real 4-0 win streak. So then you're sitting there at 22-14. And then you play Minnesota, Memphis, New York, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Golden State, Boston. That is a much tougher stretch of basketball. But that is also probably 500 basketball. So if you go on win streaks when you're supposed to go on win streaks and then hold your head above water during the more difficult portions of the season, you're going to end up in a pretty good spot. They're not contenders yet. Okay. But I feel very weird being on with loving respect to our friends at Locked On Mavericks. Like, I feel very weird being in the Isaac role of like, everything's fine. Because that's just not me. You know?
It was just funny because last season it felt like everyone was trying to tell us that the team was not as bad as we thought they were. And now it feels like we're kind of getting told that the team isn't as good as we think it is. It's kind of the feedback loop of social media. Like
absolutely.
The negativity rises to the top, at least on those platforms. So, yeah, I mean, I thought they would win 45 games and be in the top 6 of the West. They are on pace for about 44 to 45 wins, and they are 6th in the West. So, yeah.
I mean, by and large, the answer is if Luka Doncic suits up to play a basketball game, the Dallas Mavericks win about 60% of the time.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Again, yeah, the injuries is probably. I mean, that's probably the most. They just need to get those guys back. Like, with Luka and Kyrie and Derek Lively all on the floor, they have a net rating of plus 6.7, which is pretty good. Like, it's pretty damn good. The defense is not that bad. The offense is really great. Like, those are numbers. I mean, it's only 427 possessions, so you can't really. I mean, that's a lot of possessions for this part of the season. But I mean, Kyrie hasn't played since the beginning of December, so we just need a little bit more time with those 3. And we haven't seen a lot of Luka, Kyrie, Lively, and Exum because Exum's ascendance has basically been since Kyrie got hurt.
I'm glad you brought up.
So we need to see what that looks like with those 4: Kyrie, Luka, Lively, and Exum. What does that look like? Because they've only played 52 possessions together. The numbers are absurd. It's a plus 50 net rating. But it's 52 possessions. That's not even a full NBA. That's not even half. That's a half of NBA basketball. So, of half of one NBA basketball game. So, it's minuscule data to say the least. But it's something we still haven't seen yet, and we're gonna see it because Kid has already said that Exum's starting when Kyrie's back. So that's kind of like the next step. But that's what kind of stinks is it feels like we're like in a holding pattern. Like, I want to talk about something new, but it's like, everyone's hurt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not really, we can't make any grand declarations after a game like this, or even after a game like the Cleveland game, because you're missing your second best player. You're missing Maxi Kleba. They've been missing Josh Green for a while. Like, it's just tough. Like, the goal, I've said it before, the goal is just to survive. Like, can they just stay above 500 until the pieces fall back into place, and then we'll see from there.
Yeah. So 2 thoughts that you triggered in my mind. So tonight's game was a good example of why Dante Exum is actually best as an off guard. He's
Yes.
had a couple of games in a row where he's had some really wild turnover type stuff, despite how well he's played. And that's when he's not the primary ball handler, that allows him to be a different speed. And that it's just harder to cope with him as a different speed. My dog's just having a Royal Rumble next door. And then the last thought that I wanted to share is, hold on. The last thought that I wanted to share was friend of the show, Bobby Corrala, Mavs, actual Mavs employee, and I were texting at like 2 a.m. after the Christmas Day game. And he told me that according to the data that he was looking at during the Phoenix game, the average distance of a completed Luka pass that game. Do you want to take a stab on what it was? The average distance, just sort of think about what that means in a basketball court. So if half of a basketball court is what? 40, how long is a basketball court? I should know this.
Is it in feet?
Yes.
Like is the answer in feet?
The answer is in feet. So it's 92 feet long-ish, more okay. That's a FIBA basketball court. 94 feet long is an NBA basketball court. So think about this. Yeah.
10.
Okay. The average completed Luka pass against the Suns was 25 feet.
Good Lord.
So that's how far he was getting trapped from the basket. That's right. How long he was throwing passes to like Derek at the nail, both Derek's at the nail, and what was sort of happening there. And he told me there's some additional context to that so that I really shouldn't run with it too much. But if you want to just think about how much trust Luka was having with his team that day, that was it.
That's fun. That's a fun nugget. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, we might want to. I meant to have him on, but I've just been so friggin' brain dead since Christmas. All right, we've talked longer than we should have about a garbage game. We'll be back. Let's see here. They play the Warriors on Saturday. That will be a really exciting game. Is that game at a reasonable time, or do we have another?
It's whoa.
Oh, it's at the Warriors.
But it's 7:30 somehow. I don't know why.
So
I don't know why that game is starting at 5:30.
That's because the Dallas Mavericks are the only fucking team in the NBA that insist on playing these weekend and night games at horrible times because the Mavericks fans who fill up the bowl suck so much at getting to the game on time that Cuban gives them this time to get there early and they still get there late. They don't, and I don't blame Mark Cuban for not wanting to have an empty bowl, but it just goes to show you that going to a Mavs game, particularly in the lower bowl, is about being seen more than it is watching the game. And so it's like you go to these other places where they have the Warriors. So San Francisco, where the Warriors game is now no longer in Oakland, so they're playing a 5:30 local Saturday game. That would never happen in a million years, and I hate it. Now, you guys got to keep in mind, Josh and I are being whiny old fogies because we are usually awake and working following a game close for at least 2 to 3 hours. That's why we care.
Right. If we could turn off the TV and then get right into bed, we would not be complaining.
It's 10:30. We're going to be able to close shop. We're going to schedule whatever we have to run tomorrow. Meta Robinson turned in a post. And then we'll be able to go to bed or go watch TV or, screw around. So anyway, you guys have probably had enough of my bullshit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Josh, do you have any additional thoughts?
No. I think let's get out of here and save it for when Luka's back and we can get a better game here.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for hanging out. This has been Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe of Pod Maverick After Dark. Everyone have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you after the Warriors game. Bye, guys.